It's strange how silence can scream louder than words. How one sentence casually tossed like a match onto a pile of dry memories can burn down everything you thought was stable. My name's Daryl, not a name you hear much anymore, which suits me just fine. I've never liked standing out. I'm 41, wear the same jacket I've had since grad school, and I collect coins from states I've never even visited. That probably tells you a lot already. I work remote IT for a company that forgot I exist unless something crashes. My wife, Lorna, on the other hand, is everything I'm not. Sharp-tongued, magnetic, the kind of person who fills a room even before she enters it. She manages a private art gallery in downtown Dubbury, and I've always joked that her job sounded made up until I realized her life might be, too. We've been married for 9 years, together for 12. No kids, not for lack of trying. We had a name picked out for a girl, Nora. I used to whisper it into the quiet air at night when Lorna pretended to be asleep after her crying stopped. But this story isn't about Nora. It's about something Lorna said during a dinner with my family. Something that shattered the last fragile belief I was holding on to. That belief being maybe things can still be saved. It was a rainy Friday. My sister Mandy was visiting with her husband and their 2 impossibly loud boys. My parents were in town and we invited them over for a low-key dinner, which is code for frozen lasagna, 3 different salads no one touched, and Lorna pretending to be thrilled about it all. She wore a necklace I didn't recognize. Silver, modern, definitely not her usual style. I asked her about it earlier that day, and she told me she picked it up at a pop-up art vendor outside the gallery. I nodded. I always nod. I didn't ask again. We were halfway through dinner when the power flickered. The boys shrieked like it was the end of the world. My dad laughed. Lorna rolled her eyes. She'd had 3 glasses of wine by then, and her smile was starting to curl dangerously. Then Mandy brought up vacations. She said something about a family cabin trip. And before I could even open my mouth, Lorna said, "Oh, come on." Daryl wouldn't last 2 days without his Wi-Fi and sad little routine. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. I looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She was still smiling, but it wasn't real. And I knew then that wasn't a joke. That was venom. Public venom. My mom tried to change the subject. My dad reached for the bottle. I stood up slowly and said, "Excuse me for a moment." I walked out the door. I didn't come back. Not that night. Not the next. Not even when Lorna texted me the next morning. "Seriously, you're that sensitive?" "Yes, I am." And what I learned over the next few days, it wasn't just the necklace or the wine. It was the gallery. It was him. And it had been going on for a very long time. I didn't go home that night. I walked aimlessly for over an hour past shuttered shops and glowing gas station signs before settling into a motel just off Route 3. The kind with buzzing lights, peeling paint, and a front desk guy who didn't even glance up when I asked for a room. It was the perfect place to disappear. That night, I lay on the stiff mattress, fully clothed, phone on the nightstand, screen lighting up every few minutes with Lorna's messages. Some sarcastic, some concerned, all of them hollow. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I replayed the last few months in my mind, slowly at first, then frantically, like flipping through a photo album where every image had something off about it. The late nights at the gallery, the change in perfume, her sudden interest in yoga, something she once openly mocked. But more than that, it was how she looked at me lately or didn't. Like I was a bookshelf she'd walked past too many times to notice anymore. A week before that dinner, I'd gone to drop off lunch at her work. Just something small. Chicken wrap, lemon soda, a little note that said, "You've got this." That's who I've always been. The guy who overthinks, overpacks, overcares. When I arrived, the gallery was locked. No events scheduled. No back in 5 sign. Her car wasn't there. I waited 20 minutes, then left the lunch at the side door and drove home, telling myself maybe she had to run an errand. That same night, she came home late. Hair wet like she just showered. Said she fell asleep in the office between showings. I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the part of me screaming that none of it made sense. That her skin didn't smell like her shampoo. That there was a faint cologne in the car the next morning. But the most obvious sign, the way she started picking at me, Little jabs disguised as jokes. Comments about my posture, my wardrobe, my job. Like she was convincing herself that I was somehow less. That I deserved whatever she was doing. That morning, after I walked out, I finally opened one message. Can you act your age for once? It was a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke. I stared at those words until they blurred. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called in sick. Not that anyone really noticed. I don't think my boss has said my name out loud in over 6 months. But I wasn't done yet. Something snapped inside me that night. Something quiet but irreversible. I needed to know the truth. I deserved it. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into her old laptop. It was in the closet covered in a tote bag and dust. She always said it ran too slow, which is why she used her phone for everything. But I knew it still had her email saved. And that was the key. It only took 15 minutes to find everything. And when I say everything, I mean names, photos, hotel reservations, messages to someone named M. And worst of all, the folder titled Private Sketches. They weren't sketches of art. They were of him. I should have stopped the second I saw that folder. I should have closed the laptop and walked away, held on to the tiny shred of dignity I had left. But I didn't. I opened it. Inside were 15 files, each one a scanned page of what looked like charcoal or graphite drawings. They weren't of landscapes or abstract shapes. They were intimate, detailed, clearly drawn by someone who'd studied the subject up close again and again. His face, his hands, his torso. One sketch even had a date in the corner. 2 weeks ago. I didn't know who M was at first. But then I remembered at the last gallery fundraiser. There was a man named Milo who gave a long, self-congratulatory toast about supporting emerging female artists. I'd shaken his hand. He had that slick, overly confident way of talking, like every word he said should be printed and framed. He was 10 years younger than Lorna, but the way he looked at her wasn't subtle, and she didn't flinch when he did it. I kept scrolling. My chest felt tight, like I was breathing through wool. There were email drafts she hadn't deleted, messages to Milo where she wrote things like, "You make me feel like I'm 25 again," and "I forget who I am when I'm with you, and I love that." She never talked to me that way. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. But it got worse. There was one thread dated just a few days before my birthday dinner. She wrote, "He's starting to notice. I think he's suspicious about the Uber ride. But he won't do anything. He never does. He won't do anything. He never does." That hit harder than any affair. It was how she saw me, how small I'd become in her eyes. Not just unwanted, irrelevant. Still, part of me needed more proof. Some twisted part of me still wanted to see it. I remembered she used an old cloud service to back up photos from her phone before she got her new one. I guessed the password on the 4th try, Nora 2020. That's when I saw the pictures. Not many, just enough. One of them was taken in a hotel room mirror, her in a robe, kissing Milo's cheek while he held a champagne bottle. Another showed her lying on a bed wrapped in sheets that weren't ours. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Felt like swallowing glass. I closed the laptop and just sat there staring at the wall. Everything around me suddenly felt unfamiliar. The air, the silence, even my own name. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just this numb, slow-motion realization that the life I thought I had wasn't real, that it hadn't been real for a long time. Around noon, she texted again. "So, are you done sulking? Can you come back so we can move on from your little moment?" My little moment. That was it. That was when I stopped being afraid of confrontation. That was when I stopped trying to keep the peace, just to be the quiet husband who never asked for more. I called my friend Kellen, the only person I knew who wouldn't judge me. He picked up on the first ring. I hadn't cried yet. Not since I left the house. But the second I heard his voice, I broke. I couldn't even say what happened. I just handed him the broken pieces and hoped he'd help me sort them. He did. And what he suggested next, it wasn't what I expected, but it gave me a plan. And for the first time in years, I felt something like control. Kellen showed up at the motel that same evening with a duffel bag full of snacks, 2 thermoses of coffee, and a look on his face I hadn't seen since college. Calm but sharp, like he was already 10 steps ahead. I barely managed to say hi before he dropped everything on the small motel table and sat across from me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew I wasn't. Instead, he asked, "Do you want to just get through this? Or do you want her to see it?" I didn't understand what he meant at first. I wasn't a vengeful guy. I wasn't the type to make scenes or broadcast my pain. I internalized. I overanalyzed. But Kellen was different. He'd been through his own storm years ago, caught his ex stealing from him. And instead of exploding, he calmly pulled her into the living room one day and handed her a printout of her bank transactions. Told her to pack and leave. No shouting, just facts. The precision of it haunted her more than any yelling ever could. That's what he meant by see it. Not revenge, not destruction, clarity. Make her feel the weight of her choices by holding up a mirror. So we started planning. First, we backed up everything I found. Emails, photos, even the Uber receipts. Kellen had a knack for digital forensics from his old job, and he helped me arrange everything into a clean, time-stamped folder. I didn't want to hack her life. I just wanted the truth documented, unshakable, undeniable. Next, we talked about timing. Kellen said, "You don't just vanish, Daryl. You let her watch you walk out." I wasn't sure I had that kind of strength, but then I remembered her message. "Can you come back so we can move on from your little moment?" That sentence kept repeating in my mind like a drumbeat. It made something inside me stiffen. Not anger exactly, but resolve. I'd let myself be small for too long. I had folded myself into a version of me she could tolerate. But now I didn't care if she was comfortable. Cared if I was. Kellen suggested I return home just once, act like I was ready to talk, and then make her hear me. No yelling, no accusations, just the truth laid out in front of her, followed by the door closing behind me. The next morning, I drove back. The house looked the same. The same cracked driveway, same sagging porch light. But stepping inside felt different. Everything was too still. I heard the clink of a spoon from the kitchen. Lorna was making tea. She turned, startled. "Well, look who remembered his address," she said, half laughing, not bothering to hide the sarcasm. I didn't respond, just walked past her into the living room and placed the laptop on the coffee table. I opened it, tapped the spacebar, and pulled up the folder titled Thursday. She watched silently as I clicked through one photo, another, the messages, the sketches, the receipts, the email about him. I didn't say a word. I just let it play like a silent film she forgot she starred in. When the last image faded, I stood up. "I don't think you love me," I said finally. "And I'm not sure you ever did. But I loved you too much. Maybe enough to lie to myself just to keep us together." Her face went white, completely white. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I'm leaving," I said calmly. "Not just the house. I'm leaving you for real, for good." And then I walked to the door. She didn't follow, not even when I reached the car. But that silence behind me, it was the loudest goodbye I'd ever heard. I thought I'd feel relief, closure, maybe even some sick sense of triumph after walking away. But instead, as I drove, the numbness crept in again, like my body had gone cold from the inside out. I kept waiting for the emotion to hit. Anger, heartbreak, anything. But it was like my system was in shutdown mode. I pulled off the highway, parked behind a grocery store, and just sat there with the engine running, staring at nothing. Then my phone lit up. 5 missed calls from Lorna, 2 voicemails, a single text that said, "So, you think you're the victim?" Well, that was it. No apology, no remorse, no explanation, just contempt. She never denied it. Not once. I didn't respond. I just tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and let it buzz until it died. Kellen had already arranged for me to crash at his place for a few days, but I wasn't ready to face anyone, not even him. I needed space, somewhere to think, to figure out what came next because I honestly had no idea who I was anymore. I built my identity around being her husband, her supporter, her quiet backup singer. And now I was just Daryl, and I didn't know what that meant. I ended up checking into a short-term rental. Small, bare, with nothing but a bed, a table, and a kettle that whined too loudly. It was perfect. I slept on top of the covers the first night, shoes still on, clothes unchanged. I kept waking up expecting to hear her voice in the hallway, the clink of her wine glass in the kitchen, the hum of the shower. But there was nothing. And that's when I realized I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of her, the version of her I'd built up in my head, the one who laughed with me in bookstores and held my hand when the doctor said we couldn't have kids. But that version was gone. Maybe she never really existed the way I thought. 2 days later, Lorna tried again. This time, her tone had shifted. "You blindsided me. I didn't think you'd ever leave like that. You never used to stand up for anything. Guess I was wrong." She was still trying to make me feel small, still trying to frame my pain as a flaw. But buried in that message was something else. Fear. She didn't expect me to leave. Not really. I was the doormat. The guy who apologized when she was late, the one who made excuses for her coldness. She thought I'd sulk for a few days, come crawling back, and beg to talk it through. She didn't think I had it in me to vanish without a fight. And she was right. In a way, I hadn't had it in me. Not before, but now. Something had changed. I finally called a lawyer. Not because I was angry, but because I was ready to be done completely, cleanly. I didn't care about the furniture, the car, even the gallery share she'd roped me into co-signing. I just wanted freedom, the kind you feel in your lungs, the kind that doesn't come with strings or size. The lawyer listened quietly as I explained everything. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You're lucky. Most people don't leave until it's way too late." I sat with that. Was I lucky? I didn't feel it, but maybe surviving it was its own kind of luck. 2 days later, I sent Lorna the divorce papers. I didn't write a note, no dramatic last words, just my signature in a return envelope. I knew she'd see it. I knew it would rattle her. What I didn't know was what she was about to do next. 3 days after I sent the divorce papers, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer those, but something in my gut told me to pick up. I was standing in line at a laundromat waiting for a machine to free up. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Erica, the assistant gallery manager at Lorna's workplace. I'd only met her twice, both times briefly, and she'd barely made eye contact. Her voice now sounded tense, like she was trying to decide if she should even be calling me. "I'm sorry if this is out of line," she said, "but I thought you should know. Lorna's kind of spiraling." I didn't respond, just let her talk. "She's been yelling at everyone. She fired one of the interns over a coffee mistake. She broke one of the display cases yesterday and blamed a client, and she's been crying in the back office a lot." Then came the part that really caught me off guard. "She's telling people you cheated on her, that you left her for someone else, that you humiliated her in front of family and stormed out like a child." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. The woman who called me spineless, who lied to my face, who let another man touch her while I planned her birthday dinner. She was playing the victim. Erica continued, "I know it's not my place, but I saw some of the things she wrote to that Milo guy. She left her work phone open once. It wasn't just a fling. She was planning things. She talked about quitting the gallery to move closer to him. There was a whole folder about it. She named it Possibility. I don't remember what I said after that. Something short, probably. Thank you, maybe." I hung up and stood there in the laundromat, frozen, while my clothes tumbled behind a glass. Later that evening, I checked my email. There it was, a message from Lorna. Subject line, "We need to talk about optics." Optics? Like we were running a PR campaign. In the email, she demanded that I delay filing the divorce publicly for at least 30 days, claiming she needed time to manage the fallout and maintain professional credibility. She asked me to reframe the narrative if anyone asked questions. Her exact words were, "Just say we drifted. Say we grew apart. You owe me that much." I stared at that line for a long time. I owe her. She owed me 9 years of honesty. She owed me the truth when I stood in front of her with open hands and a broken heart, trying to hold us together while she was off sketching another man's body and calling it art. I didn't respond, but she didn't stop there. She began messaging people we both knew, friends, distant relatives, even my coworker Craig, who she'd only met once at a holiday mixer. She told them I was unstable, that I was overly emotional, chronically insecure, paranoid to the point of delusion. She said I'd made up the affair to mask my own failures, that I'd staged the whole exit like some sort of passive-aggressive punishment. And here's the worst part. Some people believed her. A few unfollowed me online. One friend, Martha, texted, "I'm so sorry you're going through a rough patch, but I didn't expect you to lash out like this." It's not you. I didn't lash out. I walked away. But in Lorna's version of the story, walking away was an act of violence. My silence was cruelty. My dignity rewritten as cowardice. It broke something inside me, not because I wanted them back on my side, but because I realized just how far she was willing to go to protect the version of herself she'd crafted. She didn't just cheat. She rewrote the story so I'd be the villain and she'd be the bruised heroine left behind by a husband who couldn't handle her strength. But I wasn't interested in winning back sympathy. I was interested in finishing this with my head high. So, I hired a second attorney, one who specialized in false reputation damage. Not to sue her, not to drag her down, but to ensure she couldn't keep dragging me. Because Lorna had one more surprise for me, and this time it was public. It started with a Facebook post. Lorna had never been a very active social media user, mostly sharing gallery events or the occasional vacation photo. But one night, just as I was pouring tea in my little rented apartment and about to sit down to read, my phone started vibrating nonstop. I ignored the first few pings, assuming they were spam or notifications I'd forgotten to turn off. But then I saw Kellen's name pop up. A simple message. "You need to see what she just posted. Brace yourself." With a knot in my stomach, I opened the app and typed her name. The post was public. It had already been shared over 40 times. Her profile picture was changed to a black and white photo of her looking somber, like she was mourning something sacred. Then I read the caption. "Some of you may have heard by now that Daryl and I are separating. This isn't easy to share, but I think it's important to be transparent when you're a public-facing figure. Over the past year, I've struggled silently through a marriage that left me feeling diminished and erased. I gave everything I had. I begged for connection. But in the end, he left, not because of betrayal, but because he couldn't handle a woman who stood on her own." There were several hashtags beneath that. #survivor, #healing, #strongwomenrise, and then a carousel of images. Us on our wedding day, us at an art fair, a photo of her holding a wine glass, looking out over a balcony with the caption, "Growth sometimes means letting go." I stood there in disbelief. She didn't just twist the truth. She snapped it in half, threw it in the garbage, and set the bag on fire. In her version, she wasn't the one hiding messages and booking hotel rooms under fake names. She was the one abandoned, betrayed by a husband too emotionally stunted to grow with her, and people ate it up. Dozens of comments flooded in. "You're so brave. You deserve real love. I always knew there was something off about him." Someone even wrote, "Glad you finally got out of that toxic situation." I wanted to scream. I wanted to reply to every comment with screenshots, timelines, receipts. But I didn't. Not because I was weak, but because I realized something far more powerful. She needed that lie to survive. Without it, she'd have to sit in the truth. She'd have to face the fact that she destroyed something loyal and kind for the thrill of being worshipped by someone else. And she couldn't live with that. So instead, she rewrote the story. Kellen called me again later that night. He didn't say much. Just, "Let her dig her own grave, Daryl. She's doing it already." And she was, because the internet loves drama, but it also has a memory. A week later, Milo, yes, that Milo, posted a photo from an art show. And guess who was in it? Laughing at his side with the very same silver necklace I once asked about. People started noticing. One woman commented, "Wait, wasn't that necklace from the night of her breakup post?" Another asked, "Isn't this the guy from her gallery?" Thought she was heartbroken. Then the timeline started to unravel, quietly at first, but steadily. Mutuals who'd originally offered her sympathy began pulling back. Some unfriended me silently, sure, but others started sending private messages. "I'm so sorry, Daryl. I didn't know the whole story." She's not who I thought she was. Thank you for handling this with so much dignity. I didn't reply to most of them. I didn't need to, because for the first time in over a decade, I felt like I was standing in my own skin, not hers. Not the version of me she tried to shrink or smear. Just me. The guy who walked away not because he was weak, but because staying would have meant surrendering his last ounce of self-respect. But Lorna wasn't done. Not quite. The final message came on a Sunday night, 3 weeks after the post. It wasn't dramatic. No long paragraphs. Just one question. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? And my answer, well, that's the part that finally set me free. I read her message at least 10 times. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? It didn't come with an apology. No ownership, no explanation. Just that one line like she wanted to be released from guilt without doing the work to deserve it. I sat with it for a while. At first, my instinct was to ignore it. After everything she'd done, lying, twisting the story, dragging my name through the mud publicly and privately, why should I give her the closure she never gave me? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. Forgiveness isn't something you do for the other person. It's something you do so you can move on without dragging their shadow behind you. And I was ready to let it go. So I responded just once. I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back. It means I'm free to move forward. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for. Take care of yourself, Lorna. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked the number, shut off my phone, and took a long walk through the park behind Kellen's building. The sun was setting, casting gold across the tops of the trees. It was the first time in months that the air didn't feel heavy on my chest. That week, I signed the final divorce documents. Simple, clean, no fights, no disputes. I left her with more than I needed to, more than she deserved, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had no say in my life anymore. A month later, I moved to a small coastal town 2 hours north. Quiet, humble, the kind of place where people say good morning and mean it. I got a local IT contract with a small family business, started volunteering at a community center once a week, and even adopted a dog from the shelter. His name's Rufus. He snores louder than a tractor and drools like he's paid to. But he's loyal and he doesn't care about the past. One afternoon, while walking Rufus down by the pier, I stopped by a used bookstore. I hadn't stepped into one in years. The scent of old paper hit me like nostalgia. As I browsed the shelves, someone tapped my shoulder. She was tall, glasses slightly fogged, holding a worn copy of Catch-22. Her name was Elise. She asked if I'd ever read it. I had twice. We started talking. That was 6 months ago. We're not rushing anything. She knows about Lorna. She doesn't flinch when I talk about it. She listens, laughs softly, makes amazing ginger cookies, and never tries to make me feel smaller just to feel bigger herself. Sometimes I still think about that night, the dinner, the insult, the walk out the front door without a coat. It used to feel like the end of the world. Now I realize it was the beginning of my life. Not the life I thought I needed,